All right, what's going on, everybody? So I want to share something that a lot of people have just been bombarding me with in terms of just research this, look it up. And this has not been on my radar until the last couple of weeks. I wanted to just wait it out. But in the bigger scheme of things, if you've been following me for a while, you know that we are in the midst of a war, and specifically with regards to taking down the higher powers that be, the deep state, the swamp, the elected officials that have been placed, whatever you want to call it. Again, I don't want to go down that route. If you know what I'm talking about, you know. But because there are multiple parallel stories going on here, one being that behind the scenes there's a massive military operation, there's something that's being carried out to the level and degree for which we may not fully understand it. There's a psyops, it's a fifth generation warfare. I've talked about all those things in brief, but you can research that. Now, I don't want to go down that hole because that's going to lose a lot of people, and it's very difficult unless you want to be on the same page as being on the bleeding edge of information and understanding what's really going on. It takes a lot of effort and research to do that. But on the other hand, for the normal person, the everyday person, you just want to see something happen. And especially because after 2020 and then what you saw with 2022, if your spirit is resonating with you, you know that something does not add up. Something sounds very fishy. And we saw that back in 2020, especially because a lot of people came out from the woodwork, from the grassroots effort. We had affidavits and many testimonials talking about what they saw on the ground. And you saw a lot of video footage and many things. But all these things, in some sense, for a lot of people, quote unquote, it does not warrant election fraud to the degree that it's presented in the court. And so what's going on with this particular case? This case came, I don't want to say out of nowhere. It's being filed pro se, meaning just from an ordinary American citizen, but it's the case of Brunson versus Adams. Four brothers from Utah are seeking the removal of Biden and Harris, along with 291 U.S. representatives and 94 senators who voted to certify the electors to the Electoral College on January 6th without first investigating the serious allegations in half a dozen states and some accusations on foreign election interference and the breach of national security in the 2020 presidential election. Now, very quickly, this case does not allude to the fact that there was election fraud. It does not claim that it was stolen, merely that a large majority of Congress failed to investigate the serious allegations and have their duty to protect, based on their sworn oaths, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign, domestic. And so this is the issue. It's not about like, oh, here's all this evidence and all this stuff. Yeah, maybe the military and all these people, they have it. But it just literally tells you that based on this sequence of events, the timeline of events that happened from November, December, January, and again, you can research this. I'll post a Gateway Pundit link that I'm looking at right now. But it's arguing that all of Congress was put on notice prior to its January 6th vote by more than 100 of its own members in Congress and in government, detailing serious allegations of election fraud and calling for the creation of an electoral commission to investigate the allegations. And so it's the principle of you have all this rising up, and then it's your responsibility as an elected official to be able to investigate instead of rush through it and just sign off on whatever it is. And so I'm going to go through a couple more details, but you can look this up. And so basically the legal justification for this Supreme Court case being brought up, and it's going to be brought up on January 6th, ironically, 2023. And so it's scheduled to be heard by the Supreme Court, and they're going to have to vote on whether they're going to take it. So 4 justices are needed, their votes are needed to move the case forward. And this is going to allow the potential overturning of the 2020 election, and possibly through this means, again, aside from the military and all this other stuff that's happening, possibly a legal way for them to restore Trump to the presidency. So this is different than some of the other cases that are going on. I think Moore versus Harper involving North Carolina's redistricting. It doesn't immediately upend the 2020 election, but this one potentially does, because what it's doing is that it was able to be bypassed. And the reason is that important national security interests implicated in this case allowed the Brunsons to bypass an appeal that was frozen at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit and get the case to the Supreme Court, which again has a hearing scheduled for January 6th. And so there's a lot of things building up right now. You're seeing also Twitter, you're seeing the FBI's colluding with the social media, obviously with Twitter, the Facebook to censor the Hunter Biden stuff. So a lot of stuff is kind of exploding. If you follow the Twitter stuff, there's people from the trust and safety stepping down and many things happening right now. But the other issue that may happen is because we have a lame duck Congress, there's going to be possibly some shenanigans that are going to happen in terms of packing the court or impose term limits and a mandatory retirement age for the justices. So a lot of different things may come about in this last month or so. But that's a side issue to just kind of take note of. But more importantly, the sequence of events that allowed Congress and the elected officials to be able to investigate this was ignored. The officer of DNI was required to submit a report on foreign threats to the 2020 presidential election by December 18th, 2020. The deadline was set by executive order and by Congress itself. When December 18th came and went without the ODNI submitting its report, Congress should have started asking questions and investigating. In fact, DNI John Ratcliffe announced on that day that the 17 U.S. intelligence agencies he was overseeing had found evidence of foreign election interference, but were split as to its significance and whether such breach of national security was sufficient to overturn the outcome of the election. And yet, there was no action whatsoever by Congress, no inquiry, no investigation. Instead, Congress approved the possibly fraudulent election results on January 6th without asking any questions of the DNI and the intelligence community. So again, guys, a lot of things legitimately going on here with regards to the sequence of events. And again, I'm not speaking from the perspective of deep sort of uncovering of the stuff that people that are on the bleeding edge of news are trying to figure out. That's the kind of area that I also am into, but I don't want to necessarily confuse the audience, a target audience, because a lot of people are not on the same page. But yet with this stuff, this is factual, this is stuff that's out there, but the other stuff requires a lot more due diligence and research, because for the general population, because the mainstream media, they're not in on Q and all these other things, it's just going to go over people's heads. So it's hard for people to digest. So I don't want to talk in that realm. I am in that realm and I can talk to it, but I choose not to. And especially on this platform, YouTube especially, but I can on Rumble. Now, again, look out for what's to come. Look out for all these different things and we'll see what happens. I'm not saying this is the way that it's going to go, but it's one way that a lot of people are waking up. And I want to bring it to the attention of you guys as well as whoever can get this word out, because we need to be advocating for the Supreme Court and these guys to look into this case. And so whether it's signing certain things, I think a lot of people have sent me certain things, advocating to take action. Many other things are happening behind the scenes for many people that know what's going on. So I just want to give you guys this word and the attention to this. A lot is happening. We're in a season of exposure. We are in a season for which God is tearing down those that have previously just had all this power to overwhelm the population for control, but yet now the tides are turning. So I believe that we're going to see great things coming soon. A lot of people have been speaking about that, and just wait it out in the sense of pray, continue doing your duty locally, whatever you're doing, and just let's allow God to work. So love you guys. Talk to you guys very soon.